Hey everybody, it's Chris with Life 180, and today I'm going to be doing a video on Doug Andrews' book, The Laser Fund. We're going to be going through chapter number 5, The Miracle Solution. So let's dive right into this. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the bell. That way you get notified when I launch a new video, because I'm going to be doing all of these videos. If you haven't seen the previous 4 videos, I really suggest, if you're looking at working with Doug, you're looking at doing any of this stuff, buying an index universal life insurance policy through anybody, PHP, World Financial Group, the PFA Alliance, like any of those places, make sure you you read through or watch these videos. Don't read through the books; it's a waste of your time. Watch these videos and learn about it. Absolutely, I guess, read the books to coincide, verify what I'm talking about, but really go through this stuff. So anyway, getting into chapter 5 here, and he's talking about the miracle solution. So this is where he's getting into, okay, I have this, I just told you what the laser fund was in the last chapter, even though he really didn't tell us what it was. And so now we're going to give the miracle solution. Now, he starts off with a story. So he talks about how he was in his early 20s. They had just bought a house. They were building their dream house. And then ultimately what happened was his first real experience came in 1980. The Iranian oil embargo sparked a chain of events that led to devastating nationwide recession. So that's, I got some notes here, because here's the bottom line. That oil embargo it was the catalyst, let's say, that led to some challenges. But let's not make that one event seem like it was the one thing that led to everything. The bottom line is, it's very relevant why it's important, that it's not the only thing, because of how he continues this conversation. We had runaway inflation. We had, the gas lines. We had inflation across the country in every capacity because of bad monetary policy. Very similar, actually, in the late 70s. Was probably the most similar period of time to what we're living through right now. What we're doing right now is just worse, and the government's manipulating it worse. And people have just become, I guess, far more liberal in their politics. And we don't have anybody who's willing to be a champion like Paul Volcker was and come in and jack the federal funds rate like he did at the end of 1979. He raised the federal funds rate from 6% to 19% virtually overnight. And so what did that do? That caused the problem more than the Iranian oil embargo. That the Iranian situation was something that compounded the problem, right? It made it worse. There's no doubt about that. I'm not trying to say it wasn't relevant, because it absolutely was. But you're going to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying as we go through this chapter, because he gets into some stuff in regards to rates of return and all these different things. Because remember, when the federal funds rate was increased, that means bond rates go through the roof. That means fixed investments all across the board get better and better and better. So that was like a magical moment in time for life insurance policies, where you could get huge guarantees and huge safe rates of return, depending on the type of policy you got inside of your insurance policy. So he's basically saying, what he's saying here is he was working in this business, actually, and that was a time when the market crashed. He felt bad because his clients lost money, and every time the economy would drop, Doug's heart would drop, because he would be worried about his clients, that they would inevitably have lost part of their hard-earned money. It's like this kind of, I know I sound like I'm like being super sarcastic right now, and I kind of am, because it just irritates me looking at, reading these words and knowing about the lawsuits, knowing about the tens of thousands of people that have literally had their policies designed and failed because of policy design and structure from Doug Andrew and his group and his kids and his whole organization at Live Abundant. And he talks about feeling bad about that, yet he designs and has this strategy that has literally hurt tens of thousands of people. And so when I look at that, it kind of drives me nuts. So he talks about here, okay, so he then talks about the fact that he and his wife had bought this beautiful house, and then in 1987 in October, when the market crashed 22% in one day, he was just completely happy, I guess, that while the rest of the world was, in a rough spot, so to speak, and had to make bad financial decisions, and they were getting, crushed with their investments, he was happy that he had his money in a policy. I'm trying to see where it says it. Maybe I skipped ahead, but oh yeah, so it is right here. So he was trying to say that he had his money in a policy earning 11%, right? So he was feeling good about himself, but he says that because he learned something. Fortunately, we were able to buy another home because he lost a different home, and then he was able to buy another home with no money down after watching his house get foreclosed on, or sold at an auction, I should say, after it was foreclosed on, obviously, if it was sold at an auction. The negative experience transformer, a method for turning any negative experience into a positive learning opportunity that can bring about a better future. So what he does is he goes on to talk about the fact that he learned that separating liquidity from the house, which is a great idea, and he's talking about using this and holding your money inside of a life insurance contract instead. So I'm going to warn you, as a life insurance agent, you have to be really careful about coaching people to take equity out of their home and putting it into a life insurance contract. I'm not licensed, so I will say this because I can't sell anybody anything and make money off it. I don't think it's a bad idea if you do it the right way, but there are risks, so you need to make sure that if you take equity from a home and you put it into a life insurance contract, the reason I don't like doing it in an index universal life contract is because there's no guarantees there. So there are chances that the IUL will underperform, I should say, my home, like the appreciation and the arbitrage won't exist between what I would be paying for the mortgage and how the appreciation in the account value in the IUL would go, right? And so with a whole life policy, I can guarantee that predictably, especially in today's low rate environment. Like, I know if I'm paying a 3.5% interest rate in my mortgage, that I can get at least a guaranteed long-term internal rate of return of 3.5% in a whole life policy, and I can do that on a guaranteed basis. And I can't do that with an index universal life. And I know all you IUL people out there are going to be saying, "Oh, that's stupid." You can, absolutely. Well, I have plenty of other videos that can show you that that's not the case. And if you're interested in coming on and having a conversation, if you're a real producer and you have the guts to step up and debate me about that, let's do a Zoom meeting and I will talk to anybody, anytime, any place about that. Just be ready to bring it, because it is what it is. Let's see. He found it within a few years. He and his wife were utilizing the primary financial vehicle. Okay, so he's basically the laser rating system. He's talking about the fact that he started using this laser rating system back in 1987. This irritates the crap out of me. Now, here's the deal. He's talking about the fact that in 1987, he had this laser fund. Well, guess what? Index universal life insurance policies, like he's talking about as a laser fund, didn't even exist. He likes to talk about how they were created in 1980. No, regular universal life insurance was created in 1980. Regular universal life, 1980. Because of the interest rate environment, like I talked about with Paul Volcker raising the rates, regular universal life performed very well. But the problem was the expectations that people bought them and the way they funded the policies was so out of whack that as the fixed rate environment began to decrease, so too did the performance in index universal life policies. People's assumptions and expectations and design of them were improper. The fees became suffocating. Policies started lapsing. Universal life policies ended up becoming a travesty, just atrocious performance that hurt a lot of people, tons of lapse policies, tons of class action lawsuits, tons of just issues. What he is saying ended up being his savior, ended up being the bane of a lot of people's existence, to the point where universal life insurance barely even exists to this day. Everything transitioned to index universal life insurance. Flash forward, 1997, index universal life insurance hit the marketplace and started slowly becoming, I should say, really, really popular. Ever since its induction, index universal life has followed a slower but similar curve that universal life has followed, in the sense that the performance and the cap rates and the expectations and the returns have gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse till we are right now. And it's so obnoxious to me that he's putting this out there like, oh, I had this laser fund policy that protected me. What you're selling people today based on them buying and reading this book is not even the same thing that protected you back then. So stop lying. Yeah, so I said this is garbage. Yeah, exactly. So my point. I talked about this a lot in the last book. Liquidity, safety, rate of return, income tax-free advantages. Those are all important things. You don't have the liquidity because of the surrender periods in an IUL. Not the same. It's not that it's completely illiquid, but you don't have, it's more liquid than a 401k, I'll say that. But it's not completely liquid, as he would have you believe. It's not as safe as you believe. Sure, the financial institutions are safer than a bank because insurance companies are safer, but the capital inside of the policy is not as safe as he would have you think. Rate of return is not as competitive after the cost of insurance and charges and all that stuff over a 10-year period. If you get a 2.5%, 3% internal rate of return at best, you're doing really well. A 1.5% is probably more likely the scenario. Income tax-free advantages. Yeah, there are those on the death benefit. It's fantastic from a legacy play, and from a policy loan provision perspective, it's fantastic. So now he goes to constructing your future. So he gets into this and he talks about there are different phases to it. So determine how much cash value you'd like to place in your policy. That's like the first step. You need to work with a professional, figure out the minimum amount of insurance you need to fully be in compliance fully with the IRS tax code. Good to do, but still dangerous. Plus, option B increases make the cost of insurance go up. So what I'm saying there is, even if you do the minimum death benefit, maximum cash value, what they typically do is there's two ways to fund IULs. Option A is a level death benefit, i.e. if you buy $1 million policy and fund it with $10,000 a year, the death benefit does not go up. But the problem is that $10,000, a lot more of that $10,000 goes towards the insurance, right? And so that's just the way it goes. And you may have less death benefit. I'm just using the $1 million as a starting point. Let's just stick with that. Next year, when you pay your $10,000, you're only going to have $990,000 of net amount at risk. So your charges for your insurance go down because you only have $990,000 of need for life insurance. But the problem is you now get older. So the cost of that life insurance is based on your current age, not when you bought the insurance, right? So you're always at this fighting balance risk of, are you reducing that net amount at risk enough to counterbalance the increasing charges by your increasing age for the annual renewable term inside of the policy? Because by the time you hit 60 and 65 and 70, if you have that much insurance, it's going to get really, really expensive. And when these policies don't perform, or cap rates go down, or anything of that nature, goes into play where they don't perform the same way, then that could be a problem. But the bottom line is, when you do option A, level death benefit, the cash value, A, can't put as much cash value in per dollar of death benefit, so it's not as efficient. And so that increases the charges and makes it harder for you to make up for that. When you choose option B, you can have a lesser death benefit. You can put in more cash value, but the problem is, and this is where the trick is, as the cash value goes up, so too does the death benefit. So there's always a spread, right? So it's important to understand that that number is always going to be there. So he's not telling the whole story, and he's not telling how he's going to structure it. So I would love to hear him talk about that, but he never does. But the bottom line is, as you get older, that cost of insurance remains the same. So once again, when the policy doesn't perform as it's illustrated, and you get a 5% return instead of a 7% return that was illustrated on a compounding basis, if that happens a couple times over the policy's period, when you're 65, if you have a flat year, you don't just have that flat year. They say you're protected at zero. No, you have that flat year, but you also have the internal charges for that year. And the next year, because the cash value didn't go up, it didn't eat into that net amount at risk. So now you have more insurance charges for the next year. And because when you're in your retirement years, it could just start to implode your policy without even realizing it. It's crazy. So he talks about there are 4 stages to getting these policies set up. So this is going to be fun. Design and approval acquisition, maximum funding, profits, and distribution. So let's go through this. So he talks about design and approval, and I say there are different ways to fund a policy, MEC limits, you got to follow all this. I just kind of talked about that. The idea is you want to make sure, according to the IRS, they give you the ability to fund up to a certain level based on your age, your health, the amount of money you want to put in. So you want to figure out what is the minimum death benefit that they'll allow you to have to the dollar point with the amount of cash value. So don't say, I want to buy $500,000 of insurance. Ask them. In this, I would first of all suggest not doing this at all. If you are going to do this, I would just sit there and say, listen, I have $6,000 a year, $500 a month, $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month. This is what I have. What's the least amount of death benefit that I can buy for this? Show it to me. What does the option A look like? What does the option B look like? What's the increasing death benefit look like? What's the level death benefit look like? I want to see both options, and I want to see how it plays out, and I want to see what the assumptions look like at 4.5% return on an annual basis from here until the day I stop funding it, and then go from there. And that's what I would do. Anything other than that in these policies, and you're just asking for problems. Even doing that, there's still some risk, but I think if you look at that and you realize the risk that you are still have on the table and what the realistic returns are going to be, and then you look at other alternatives in the fixed space like whole life insurance, when properly structured that way, you have more liquidity in whole life insurance, and long-term, even though you don't have quite as much upside potential, to me, the extra liquidity and how you can use that for real estate is much better and more than makes up for it. So, okay, so I jumped ahead a little earlier when I was talking. I say the cost of insurance for older people is super prohibitive. Oh yeah, this is what well, if you're 55 and older, here's what I'm gonna say, and you're thinking about buying an index universal life policy, I would say just stop, don't, because especially if you want to start taking income but before you're 70, because the first 10 years of these things are super inefficient because you got a lot of fees. Most of your expenses are front loaded with the fees, plus you're during a surrender period, right? So 10 years into this, you're barely going to be breaking even in most situations, right? And so why would you start at 55 to have to take money out at 65 to 70 when your money has barely even started working for you yet? They're going to sell you that it's really good for you. They're going to sell you that it's great. But if you're 55 and older, I would steer clear from this. Like it's my worst enemy. Then he goes and says, you need to work with somebody when you're talking about designing. You need to work with somebody, and an insurance policy may be difficult to change down the road. So working or word without incurring significant expenses, especially if it was structured incorrectly from the beginning. So that is true. And so the idea here is they're saying you need to work with somebody with a track record of success. Well, guess what? Doug has been involved in multiple lawsuits, class action lawsuits. Go look at my Doug Andrew Exposed video. He was literally named in a class action lawsuit where 24,000 people's policies lapsed because of his design. So yeah, he's right. It is horrible. And I would say you need to work with somebody that's got a track record of not getting sued by 60,000 people like he did. So that's what I would say. Phase 2, acquisition. All right, so it talks about, acquisition is basically when you put it in force and you pay your first premium. Near the end of the first year is the anniversary date. You're gonna get a statement that it's gonna tell you the premium cash paid, how much cash value has been accumulated, and the cost of the insurances that have been charged. One of the things here to understand, you always have to look at in an IUL policy is it's not this clean. You have to look at the current cash value that is going to be credited, and you also have to look at the surrender value because that is going to be what's liquid, right? If he talks about and touts the fact that these things are ultimately liquid, and they're not, especially in the first couple of years. So if you're thinking you can put money into these things and access it for real estate, there are certain ways you can do it. There are certain companies, not all, a couple companies that will allow you to put non-commissionable premiums into these things, and those premiums become very liquid very quickly. I would still shy away from them. Most life insurance agents won't even touch them because let's face it, life insurance agents get paid based on commission. And if it's non-commissionable premiums, they're not exactly jumping out of their seats trying to get you to buy those, right? Like that's just the way it goes. Most companies don't train to it. I know when I was at National Life Group, they had that option to do for people. And sometimes we would take it and we would put it in there on little tiny chunks, but you don't want to do too much of the policy for that. You basically would do it kind of like behind the scenes a little bit and to make the policy perform better. But you don't really talk about it very much. And these guys, whether they do or don't do that, it's just kind of something to take into consideration. So every insurance policy is different, but generally the minimum amount of time it takes to max fund a policy is 5 years. So this is the thing. He says that the minimum time it takes is 5 years. I would say this: if you do the minimum of 5 years and you just leave it there, that's one of the things that got him involved in this class action lawsuit from what I read in the descriptions and the complaints. Once again, go watch my Doug Andrew Expose video and you'll see what I'm talking about. When you only fund these for 5 years in the surrender period, and the biggest charges of this are in the first 10 years, it makes those dollars so much less efficient, and it does not perform the way that he's saying it's going to. So just be careful on that. So phase 3 is maximum funding. Yep, that's great. You want to make sure that you fund this as the minimum death, max cash value, jam as much money in as possible. I would say don't max fund it over just the 5 years. It's going to end you in problems. That's a stupid, stupid philosophy, in my opinion. Don't ever do that. Number 4, profits and distribution. So this is, okay, so I jumped ahead a little bit, so I apologize. But he says, let's say someone has had her policy in force for 10 years. The policy has a death benefit of $1 million, and it's accumulated a cash value of $800,000. She's only going to pay the cost of the remaining $200,000 of insurance. So I talked about this before. That's that net amount at risk. Here's the deal. If that's the case, during 10 years, chances are you paid at least $700,000, $750,000 in premiums. So that return on your capital over that 10 years is not going to be very good. That's not impressive, right? So that's not good. Plus your insurance, depending on your age. By the way, your ability to do this with an option A, if you choose an option A, is going to be harder and harder. That's going to have to buy you more insurance with a big premium like that, based on your age and health rating and all that stuff. That's going to be a harder thing to accomplish. So he's using these numbers that really don't come into play very often in real world scenarios. And so the beneficiary is saying, what he's explaining this as is accurate, but he's not talking about the variables that suck. He's talking about just, this principle that makes it seem really good, but the internal rate of return will have been horrible. So why do that? Secondly, if you want to be able to pull this off and get that money in there and have the cash operate effectively at the beginning, then you do option B, increasing death benefit. Now, one of the things that you can do is when you go to shift and stop contributing to the policy, you can shift the increasing death benefit option B to option A. You can pivot it to a level death benefit so it doesn't keep increasing on you. That can keep the charges from running away on you, and that's definitely something I would suggest everybody do if you're going this path, or if you feel like you're stuck in this path. Go do that. And that's it. But at the end of the day, he's not telling us the whole story here, and maybe he'll get into it later in the book. We'll see as I get there. But I don't think he will because then it would be selling away. So the best way to access money through the policy is tax-free loans. I agree with that. That's why it's green. Tax-free loans are the way to go. So the biggest 5 takeaways here is hard-won lessons and national economic upheaval led to the Live Abundance focus on the Laser Fund as a powerful financial vehicle with its unrivaled liquidity. That part is such a lie. Unrivaled liquidity. The surrender charges make that unrivaled liquidity just a bunch of malarkey. Safety is okay. Predictable rates of return are also garbage. I know they pitch you on the cap rate, 10% upside, 0% downside protection, all that stuff. But there's not predictable because the companies are going to change your cap rate. Go do research. Cap rates always get reduced on these policies. During the surrender period, they let you have higher cap rates because they control your money. They don't care. They know you can't go anywhere. But once you start gaining control of your money, they start to reduce cap rates because they can't afford to keep paying you those kind of returns when they're not controlling the money and it's not absorbing fees, right? So it's just something to consider. Constructing, okay, an abundant financial future with a laser fund could be compared to building a 5-story apartment building. He did this whole analogy. It was kind of stupid. As you would create blueprints for your house, for blueprints for an apartment building, during phase 1, your financial professional works closely with you to design a policy that fits your circumstances and goals while maintaining flexibility and that complies with the tax requirements, right? And I make a comment, same people are the same people that design the class action lawsuit policies designing your policies, because I don't know, I might steer clear of that. And phase 5 is, or phase 4 is like reaping the profits from your fully leased building. That is just not accurate at all. So anyway, that is chapter 5, I believe, is that number. And this stuff, the miracle solution, there is no miracle solution for your finances, guys. There's just not. It's just not. This is all hype, and honestly, it's at your expense. This information, go back and read. If you want to get a good laugh, go back and read his book Misfortune. This is all very similar stuff. He's reworded it, he's reworked it, he's created new marketing, copy and stuff like that goes with it. But the principles are the same principles that he wrote about in Misfortune. And Misfortune is the book that led to all his lawsuits and the class action and all those stuff that, he had his license and now he doesn't. His son lost his equities license because of a Ponzi scheme. Like, this is the kind of stuff, like, it's unbelievable to me. So I'm doing these videos at night because I'm just trying to share this with people. I'm reading this book, and I figure if I'm going to take the time to read it, I'm going to share it with people because I create this content. I can't sell you anything because I'm not licensed. I'm literally just doing this because I can't stand seeing people take advantage of. And so I hope this helps. If you like this video, if you found value in it, please hit that like button. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because as I go through this video or this book series and I'm doing a review, I'm going to be, you'll get notified every single time I launch a new video, which is awesome. And I'm going to be doing more videos, more reviews on stuff like Curtis Ray, people that are doing very similar practices to this that to me are super, super dangerous and destructive potentially to your personal finances. If you have any questions, you can look down below. There's a link you can reach out, get a hold of me. I'm happy. Once again, I can't advise you specifically on what to do. I have agents I can connect you with if you want. But if you want me to look at your policy to give you my opinion on if it's well designed or not well designed, happy to have a conversation with you. I can't tell you exactly what you would do, but I could look at the policy and say this policy is garbage or it's good based on what your needs are, and then I could push you to an agent that I trust that would do the right thing. And that's it. But that's kind of all I have to offer. If you're a life insurance agent, if you are looking to build your business, that is pretty much what I do. You can reach out. Happy to help. Talk about how to create more content, get sales systems built, generate leads online, improve your personal branding online. That is my heyday. If you need any help building a business as a life insurance agent, that's my jam. So anyway, hope this video finds you well. I hope you have a blessed, inspirational day, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.